Been me, neighbor was already dead. Hey, before I start, I just want to say that I have never told this story out loud before. Not to my mom, not to my best friend, not even to my therapist who I started seeing because of exactly what I'm about to describe. I've been carrying this for 2 years now, and tonight I finally feel ready to let it out. My name is Jay, and when this happened, I was 23 years old. I was living alone for the first time in my life. First real apartment, no roommates, no parents down the hall. Just me and a secondhand couch and a $12 lamp I was genuinely proud of. I worked from home, data entry, boring stuff, and my entire world was pretty small. Wake up, coffee, work, cook something, watch something, sleep, repeat. I know that sounds lonely, but honestly, I loved it. Simple, quiet, predictable, and that's exactly why what happened felt so wrong. Nothing in my quiet little life had prepared me for any of it. I moved into Riverside Apartments in early October. It was one of those older buildings, not haunted looking old, just tired beige walls everywhere. Carpeted hallways that always smelled a little like dust, no matter how much the cleaners came. There was an elevator that made this low, steady hum every time it moved, like it was breathing. My unit was on the third floor, apartment 308. It had one window that looked out over a small interior courtyard, a tiny kitchen, and walls thin enough that you could hear your neighbors if they laughed too loud. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Band right next to me, apartment 309, lived my neighbor. His name was Marcus. I met Marcus on my second day in the building. I was carrying groceries up the stairs. The elevator was making an extra loud noise that day, and I didn't trust it, and I kind of bumped into him on the third floor landing. He was a tall man, maybe late 40s, calm-looking gray sweater, dark eyes that were friendly but quiet, the kind of man who looked like he'd seen a lot but didn't feel the need to talk about it. He picked up a bag I dropped without me even asking. Handed it back. I said thanks. He said, no problem. Just moving in. I said yeah. He said, welcome to the building with a small smile, and then he went into his apartment, and that was it. 2 minutes, maybe less. You bet, just a normal, forgettable hallway moment. But over the next few weeks, I noticed something about Marcus. He was extremely consistent, like unusually so. Every morning at exactly 7:15, I'd hear his door click shut, footsteps down the hallway toward the elevator. Every evening, around 6:45, footsteps back door clicks, and then nothing. No TV sounds, no music, no phone calls, no sounds at all, really. I genuinely thought he was the perfect neighbor. I even texted my mom about it. I said something like, my neighbor is so quiet and polite, I got lucky. I really thought I got lucky. Until the Tuesday that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in late November, cold outside, gray sky, the kind of day where the light never really comes up fully. I was at my desk, working when I heard someone knock on my door. 3 knocks, slow spaced out, like the person was in no hurry at all. I got up, walked over, opened the door. The hallway was completely empty. I looked left, I looked right. Nobody. I figured it was the wrong door. Happens in buildings, right? Someone on a different floor, visiting a neighbor. I shrugged and went back to my desk. 20 minutes later, 3 more knocks, same slow rhythm. This time I moved fast. I practically jumped up and pulled the door open. Empty hallway again, but this time Marcus's door was open. Not wide open, just a crack. Maybe 2 inches, and it was dark inside. I stood there in my doorway for a long moment. Then I called out quietly, not wanting to be weird. I said, hello, Marcus? Nothing. The door didn't move. No sound from inside. I told myself it was a draft. Old building, right? Gaps in the frames, air moving around, totally normal. I went back inside, locked my door, went back to work. But I didn't fully focus for the rest of that day, and that night I slept with the light on in the hallway for the first time. I told myself it was just a habit I was getting into. I was lying to myself. The next morning, I knocked on the door of Mrs. Patel in apartment 306. Sweet woman, mid-60s, always had her doormat perfectly straight, always said hi in the elevator. She was the kind of neighbor who just knew everything that happened in a building. You know the type. I asked her casually if she'd seen Marcus lately, just to make sure he was okay. Bib. She looked at me with this expression. I couldn't quite read at first, like she was trying to figure out why I was asking. And then she said, and I remember this word for word, she said, honey, Marcus moved out weeks ago. I blinked at her. What do you mean, when? She said about 6 weeks back. Said one morning the building manager came with a couple of guys, went into 309 and quietly moved everything out. No announcement, no goodbye, just gone. I stood there in her doorway feeling this strange cold feeling spreading through my chest. Because I had seen Marcus not 6 weeks ago, the week before, we passed each other right outside the elevator. He nodded, I nodded, normal neighbor nod, the kind you do 100 times without thinking. But according to Mrs. Patel, that was impossible. I went to see Dale, the building manager, that same afternoon. Middle-aged guy, always smelled like black coffee, kept a little desk fan running on his desk year-round for no reason I ever figured out. I told him I wanted to ask about the tenant in 309. His face did something. It went still in this very specific way, Not surprised, not confused, but careful, like he was deciding something. He said, 309 has been vacant for over 6 weeks. I told him I'd seen someone going in and out of that unit as recently as the previous week. He said that wasn't possible. He said the unit was locked and the only key was in his drawer right there. I asked him to come upstairs and check with me. He said he would that afternoon. He didn't come. I waited 2 more days. Vib, B didn't come then either. So I started keeping a log on my phone. Every sound I heard from next door. Every footstep in the hallway, timestamps, everything. The first few entries felt ridiculous, like I was overreacting to nothing. But after a few days, the list was long and the pattern was there. Someone was still keeping that 7:15 schedule. About 2 weeks after I talked to Dale, I got the real story. And it hit me so hard I had to sit down. I was at the mailboxes on the ground floor when I ran into Pete from the second floor. He'd been in the building 3 years. We'd chatted a couple of times. Nice enough guy. Worked nights somewhere. I brought up Marcus casually, just testing the waters. Pete went very quiet. Then he said slowly, Jay, Marcus didn't move out. I said, what do you mean? He said Marcus passed away 4 months ago. Heart attack in his apartment. He was in there for almost 2 days before anyone noticed. The mail had piled up. A delivery person mentioned it. Building management had handled the whole thing quietly, cleaned the unit, removed his belongings, didn't make an announcement, because in buildings like this, news like that scares people away. I stood completely still. 4 months ago, I moved in 6 weeks ago, which means that when I met Marcus in the stairwell on my second day in the building, he had been dead for 2 months. The man who helped me pick up my groceries. The man who welcomed me to the building with a small, quiet smile. He wasn't there. He couldn't have been there. Give B? Okay. I want to be honest with you here, because I think it matters. My first reaction was not fear. It was not panic. It was pure, stubborn denial. I told myself Pete was confused. Wrong apartment, wrong person. Something got mixed up somewhere, because the other option that I'd had a full, real conversation with someone who had been dead for 2 months was something my brain just would not accept. It pushed back hard. I went back upstairs, sat on my couch, opened my laptop to get back to work like a normal person, told myself I was fine, and then I saw the note. It was on the floor just inside my front door. White paper folded once, no envelope, slipped under while I was downstairs. I picked it up, opened it. It said, you have been talking to the wrong person. Bib, B, do not go to the police yet. I can explain everything. M, that was all M. I sat on that couch for a very long time, not moving, just reading those 2 sentences over and over. Either Marcus was somehow alive and had been hiding in that apartment this entire time, or someone else had written this note. Someone who knew I had been asking questions, someone who had been watching me ask them, and then I noticed the paper was folded a second time. I opened it further. Inside was a coffee shop address 8 minutes away and a time. The next morning, 10 a.m. I know exactly what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, Jay, do not go, Jay, you absolute fool, do not go to that coffee shop. And I hear you. I genuinely do. But here's where I was mentally at that point. Bai had been living next to something I didn't understand for weeks. I had been ignored by my building manager. I had been sleeping with my hallway light on. I had a log on my phone with dozens of entries that were slowly convincing me I wasn't imagining things. I needed an answer. I needed this to make sense in some way. Anyway. So the next morning at 9:58, I walked into that coffee shop. It was warm inside, smelled like cinnamon and something baking. Small place, maybe 8 tables. I ordered a coffee just to have something to hold and sat down near the front window where I could see the door. I waited. 10 minutes, 15, 20. Nobody came to my table. I was just about to leave. I had my coat half on when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message. It said, look to your left. I looked, there was a man at a corner table. How I had missed him when I came in, I genuinely don't know. He was completely still, medium height, brown jacket, baseball cap pulled low over his face, and he was already looking directly at me. I walked over slowly and sat down across from him. He reached up and took off the cap. I had never seen this man before in my life. He said, I wrote that note. My name is Daniel. And I know exactly who has been living in apartment 309. Daniel said he was a private investigator. He had been hired, he wouldn't tell me by who, professional thing to watch apartment 309 for the last month. He said that after Marcus died, someone broke into that unit, not to rob it. Viv, there was nothing left to rob. Management had already cleared it. They broke in to live there, quietly, without registering, without paying rent, without anyone knowing they existed. And that person had been there the entire 6 weeks I had been in the building. The figure I saw in the hallway when I moved in, the person who kept that 7:15 schedule so perfectly, the one who knocked on my door 3 times, twice, that wasn't a ghost. That wasn't a squatter who got lost. That was someone who chose that apartment specifically, deliberately. Daniel slid his phone across the table to me. There was a photo on the screen, grainy hallway lighting, taken from a distance, but the face was clear enough. My stomach dropped straight through the floor. I knew that face. It was Ryan. Bay, my coworker. Ryan and I worked on the same remote team. We talked on video calls 2, sometimes 3 times a week. He was always professional, a little quiet, a little awkward, but nothing alarming. The kind of coworker you say have a good weekend to, and then completely forget about until Monday. I had given him exactly 0 thought as a person outside of work. But Daniel had been doing his research, Ryan had a history, there had been a restraining order filed against him 2 years before by someone he'd worked with at a previous job. He had a pattern of fixating on people he worked with closely, people he felt a connection to, even if that connection only existed in his head. When those people tried to put distance between themselves and him, he didn't take it well. Daniel told me that Ryan had found out where I lived. He wasn't sure how. Possibly through a work document, possibly through something I'd mentioned on a call, without thinking twice. And he had moved into that vacant apartment next to me within a week of me signing my lease. He had been tracking my schedule, learning my patterns. Those slow knocks on my door, Daniel said those were tests. Ryan was checking how alert I was, how aware, whether I was paying attention. He'd been doing this for 6 weeks, right next to me, every single night. Ryan knew my address before I had even finished unpacking. He had chosen an apartment specifically to be beside me. He had lived there silently in a vacant dead man's apartment. For the entire time I had been building my little normal life in 308. While I was making coffee in the morning, while I was on calls with him, talking about spreadsheets and deadlines and weekend plans, he was right there. I called the police that same afternoon, filed a full report. Officers came to the building that evening and searched 309. There was a sleeping bag rolled up in the closet, food wrappers and empty bottles in a trash bag. Someone had clearly been planning to take out a phone charger plugged into the wall behind the radiator where you wouldn't see it unless you looked, and a notebook. The officers didn't show me what was in the notebook. But one of them, a woman, maybe mid-30s, calm and professional the whole time she took my statement. At the end, she looked at me with an expression I still think about sometimes late at night. She said, "You were lucky. You didn't realize he was there sooner." She did not explain what she meant. I did not ask her to. Ryan was found 3 days later. He'd checked into a motel about 30 miles away. Probably the night Daniel's presence spooked him out of the apartment. He was arrested on breaking and entering, criminal stalking, and some other charges that came out later in the investigation that I won't go into detail about here. His lawyer at trial argued he was harmless, that he had no plan to hurt anyone, that he simply wanted to be near someone he felt a connection to. That was the phrase they used. A connection. The judge gave him 3 years. I moved out of Riverside Apartments the same week he was arrested. I didn't pack carefully. I just grabbed everything and left. Since then, I've moved twice more. And every single time I move somewhere new, I do the same thing. I check the unit next to mine before I commit to it. I introduce myself to every neighbor on my floor within the first week. I learn their names, I notice their patterns. I pay attention to when something feels off even slightly. Because here's what this entire thing taught me, and I mean this with everything I have. The scariest thing is not the unknown. It's not the dark, it's not the unexplained. The scariest thing is the familiar. It's the person you see on a video call twice a week and never think twice about. It's the quiet neighbor whose schedule you've memorized because it's so consistent. It's the face you already trust. The most dangerous thing in your world can be standing right next to you, completely invisible because you never thought to look. I want to leave you with one last thing, and this one still gets to me. About 3 months after I moved, I was scrolling back through old photos on my phone. I was looking for something else entirely. And I came across a photo I took during my very first week in the apartment. Just a casual shot of my little desk setup, my laptop, my lamp, my coffee mug. I was proud of my first real place, you know. But I remember sending it to my mom with some caption, like all settled in. I almost kept scrolling, but something made me zoom in. Behind my shoulder, through my apartment window, you can see across the small interior courtyard. And on the other side of that courtyard, the window of apartment 309, there is a figure standing in it, still facing directly toward my window. I had taken that photo on my 3rd day in the building. I had sent it to my mother. I had looked at it a dozen times over the weeks I lived there. I never noticed him. He was there from day one. Hey, if you made it all the way to the end of this, thank you. That genuinely means a lot. This wasn't easy to put into words, and knowing someone actually listened and stayed with me through it, that matters more than I can say. If this story gave you chills tonight, if it made you want to check your locks one more time before you sleep, if it made you think twice about the people around you that you've never really looked at closely, then it did what I needed it to do. If you want to hear more stories like this, real, personal, the kind that stay with you, please subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment below telling me which part got to you the most. I read every single one. Take care of yourselves out there, pay attention to your neighbors, and good night.